right, and we are live. Welcome, everyone, to another installment of CoffeeEDH. Grab your favorite cup of coffee and let's talk about some Commander. As always, have Coach J-Ro here, my wonderful co-host, and this week we have joining us Uncle Russ to talk about some deck building resources on the web. We are super excited. Russ, tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's go with just some basic questions. What's your favorite superhero?
My
Uh, Favorite place to travel, and then current favorite deck that you have constructed.
okay, well, actually, the first one's easy. Favorite superhero, without a doubt, is Wolverine, and not just the OG Wolverine, who's actually the best Wolverine, but my favorite is actually the X-23 Laura Kinney
Awesome.
because she's just so cool. Um, Big props to the OG Wolverine. Actually is the best Wolverine, but I just like Laura Kinney a little bit better. Favorite
Nice.
place to travel is my honeymoon spot with my wife is Jamaica. It's
Hmm.
beautiful if you ever get the chance to go. Um, and the people there are super duper nice. So it's really nice vacation spot. And favorite commander deck actually has happens to be my Merkle Lord of Bones. It's an enchantment deck based off of Merkle that says when a creature dies, you can exile it and bring it back as an enchantment. So then you add some things like Sithis, you add some things like Heliod, maybe a Walking Ballista or two. Um, well, it's Commander, so not two, but
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
That's great.
but it's just a fun deck. I've won with it a couple times, but even when I don't win with it, it still gets to do its thing usually, and I still have a lot of fun with it. So that
See
is my
now, and
flavor
now
of the
I'm
week.
I'm thinking about if Opalescence is out with Miracle out.
Oh,
Oh,
that could
blessings.
be.
Drop Starfield. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
solid. Uh, and then tell us a little bit about your place in the Commander community. What do you get involved in? What are some things that you like to do? You are a streamer, so that's something that might be worth mentioning as well.
Yeah, I thank you. I do stream on Twitch. Friday nights we do Commander. Saturday and Sunday I do Arena, but our you can also find me guesting on a lot of Commander streams because I just love the format so much. Um, but you can also find me on the Twitters at Uncle Russ Games,
Mm-hmm.
where I do daily, just daily nice things, national days, and the occasional MTG jokes.
Nice. Yeah, it's cool to have people in the community who are just like involving others in those little positive things. It's like reminders that kind of keep you grounded almost. Like if you do like the daily, oh, today is this day of the year. Um, feel like that keeps you almost like grounded in the moment, in the day, and that's really cool. Um, yeah. So today we're talking about deck building resources. I have a bunch of stuff. I think about like the journey that I went through as far as like the different resources that I'd use to build decks, like pre Commander mostly. But what are some that you guys think are like super valuable? What when you started playing Magic, like what were your resources? What did you use?
I'm sorry, I laugh. I actually started playing Magic back in like 1994, 95. So my resources were literally just my friends, and then when Wizard Magazine came out, that's
Mm-hmm.
like all we had, like the price guide.
I love that.
So like then the internet was kind of in it, well, it was definitely in its infancy.
Mm-hmm.
So, there was like the Usenet bulletin boards, but that was about it. Like you had nothing. It was your friends like, "Oh, I heard that there's this card that has this combo." You know, the my there was the Ley Druid Maze of Ith, where basically you set it up for infinite mana, but then, you know, you had nothing to do with it because it was basic magic at the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think about times like that and how much things have changed that we now have like so much access to information that there's like established metas almost in like so many different ways. uh, when you come across the different formats of Magic. Yeah, Jiro, what about you? What were some of your first resources that you started using?
So I started playing at a. So initially, the cards that I had were cards that I pulled from booster packs or cards that I got from the teacher who got me into Magic. So it was interesting to sort of build decks that way out of basically the he had giant long boxes, but most of it was like draft chaff and such. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's a good card, what's a bad card, how do things work. The rules are something that we had to sort of teach ourselves, um, and the rules didn't make a ton of sense, and so we had to figure out how to go around those rules. Um, in terms of the deck building resources, they didn't really exist, at least not as much as I would have liked. And so I would read whatever I could find online. Most of it from Wizards.com. The two major article series that changed the way that I viewed Magic were from Brian David Marshall, and this is one that he likes that I bring it up, even though most people have kind of forgotten about it. But it was Deconstructing Famous Decks.
Hmm.
I love that series because I didn't know what was good or what wasn't good. And so this was a way of saying, okay, this is a deck that's done well before. And if you can find analogs to those cards, you can recreate the success that other decks have had. So that's one of the things that originally convinced me when you're trying to build a deck, one of the things you can do is look to the past and try to update those classics. If you see somebody do something really cool, like at a pro tour level, you can create that in any format.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, just taking those building blocks and kind of like
mhm.
transliterating them over to the different places that you play. You were gonna say something, Russ. Go for it.
No, I was going to agree. I was going to say that's also a great way to learn the game.
Mm.
Um, you know what I mean? As far as like not just meta, but what cards do and learn how different cards interact.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So the first deck I brought to an FNM, it was the standard Friday Night Magic,
Mm-hmm.
and I made a green white prison deck designed off of the Deconstructing Green White Prison article, and actually did pretty well. Um, but it encouraged me to find lockdown combinations that I otherwise wouldn't have really looked at. Like within ninth edition, there was a Chomano Revolutionary
Mm-hmm.
and Pariah. So if I managed to put together Chomano plus Pariah, then I could lock down the game as long as people were using like damage based removal.
Yeah, and when you're talking about so what I associate stuff like that is if you kind of like move it a few years forward is net decking, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
in and to Russ's point, in order to learn some of these more complicated formats, I would say that like honestly, net decking is not a bad way to do it because you know that the deck is going to work. You don't have to worry about the construction portion of it. We're talking as far as the resources and such. You can do the net decking to learn the format, but we're talking about like, hey, let's take these pieces and make them into something different, something bigger, something you'll enjoy playing. Um, for me, I started playing Magic in 2012, and same kind of thing. You got the draft chaff box that your friend has from the years he's already played, and says, "Hey, you can go ahead and build whatever you want out of this." And I think that this hexproof 3/4 Rhino for 5 is a really great card because you can't target it. Um, but yeah, I think as you mature in your deck building in general, like I moved pretty immediately to online actually because I started playing around on Gatherer. so the precursor to Scryfall, the Wizard's official search engine, basically. Um, know your keywords. That's like, or your trigger words. That's something that I'll say right off the bat when you're trying to use these tools. Is if you know your trigger words like whenever or if enters or throw down battlefield or cast or play from exile or something like that. If you know how those words work in combination, you'll have a lot easier time finding the cards that you want. And that's something that Gatherer taught me originally because it also had the functions right on the main page of like you can do it fulfills this and this, or this, and this and not this, which is just programming language, but in actual language, right? Um, so it's super cool that they had that available early on. And since I used that so often, I think that's developed a lot. How
Yep.
I address building decks is just looking for those keywords and synergies.
Yep, and if you use quotes around those key terms, then you do what's called a Boolean search,
Mm-hmm.
which is a slightly more accurate way of searching.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Additionally, like as far as like a deck building site, I used Tapped Out at the time, which was like super super old school. And I don't know how much they've updated it since the original inception of the site, but the look is still very much the same. The feel is still very much the same. You had to type in each individual card or copy paste a list into it. If you wanted to, there wasn't like a real search for kind of situation. Um, and with these other resources that we talk about, we'll talk about in more depth, but like Moxfield and everything, like you can actually advance search within that program, and I haven't seen that happen in Tapped Out yet. Yeah, search engines. Let's go with search engines. Like, what do you guys like? How do you use them? What is something that actually appeals to you about the one that you use?
So when I start out building a deck, first thing I do is I'll grab I'll get inspiration from a commander that I find.
Mm-hmm.
Either going through my stuff or opening packs. You always find the one that speaks to you.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'll go to like Scryfall or Gatherer, and I'll start typing in keywords around it to try and like pull up some synergies to see what I can pull from.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there narrow it down to what do I own, what might I have to order, and then from there kind of start building the deck and go to a couple other sites where I that I'm sure we're going to talk about. Like I just actually started moving everything over to Moxfield
Mm-hmm.
because it helps me visualize a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as far as the searches, like the you know definitely Scryfall is probably the one I use the most. But at work they blocked that one and not Gatherer. So hey.
Love that. Okay. So, talking about Scryfall, I think that in general, yeah, it's kind of. I have the same catchphrase here. It's learn your trigger words because those are going to be super helpful in finding the different pieces that are going to help your deck work properly. Um, I would say that like let's just take Miracle for example because you were talking about that earlier, right? So you're talking about like enchantment synergies. So the type of things that I would search if I were looking for that is like whenever enchantment enters, right? And you can maybe put draw in there or something like that. Because it'll take those parts, and if all of those parts match, there'll come up a list of cards that are like your enchantress cards, right? The ones that are gonna draw you a card whenever an enchantment hits the battlefield or whenever you cast it.
And the key, or the reason why that's so important, is because not every card will necessarily have constellation on it,
Mhm.
or will have whatever the keyword is. So, uh, just because it has the ability that's really similar to it doesn't mean that it'll have the keyword on it. Like Tireless Tracker is essentially landfall,
Mm-hmm.
but if you just search for landfall cards, you won't see it.
Yeah. So,
Oh, that's a good point.
um, yeah, some other things you might search for whenever permanent leaves battlefield, that kind of stuff, because Miracle cares about that kind of thing as well. Because if like you're having, oh gosh, what's a good example of this?
Well, just an easy one is
Go for
any
it.
mana dorks you have on the field that people want to blow up.
Yeah.
Try and hold you back a little bit. It's easy to bring them back as an enchantment.
Mm-hmm. So, because Miracle in particular, let's go ahead and read that card real quick. Actually,
It's a fun card.
yeah, Miracle Lord of Bones. Alright, so as long as your life total is less than or equal to half your starting life total, Miracle Lord of Bones is indestructible. Whenever another non token creature you control dies, you may exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's an enchantment and loses all other card types. So, token synergies, also something that you can be looking for with that particular one, right? Uh, you can run your anointed processions, your parallel lives, your doubling season, stuff like that, which are going to be if you would create, because it's a replacement effect. If would create token, uh, additional basically are the words that you're kind of like looking for, and you'll end up, uh, yeah, or create twice that many, right? In the case of parallel lives, anointed procession, that kind of stuff. So yeah, know your terminology. Terminology is going to be super helpful in developing that your searching ability. I guess is a good way to put that.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, uh, yeah, I think that for search engines, that's the pretty important stuff. Like learn how to exclude certain things also. So if you're looking for, because like color exclusion is pretty much the easiest one, right? Because we go by color identity. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and Scryfall.
Uh,
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say card types can be important as well.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in a miracle deck, you want to make sure that whatever jobs you want the deck to do are being done by creatures.
Mm-hmm.
That way, you get the extra benefit off of them when they die. So Llanowar Elves is better than say Rampant Growth in that deck or Wild Growth.
Absolutely. Yeah. So like in that particular deck, I could think of running things like Shriekmaw is a great example because it when you evoke it, it dies and immediately comes back, and you get it again, um, which is a really good one. Same thing with Foundation Breaker would be another solid one. Um, yeah, any of the new the elemental incarnations that are in those colors. So I believe it's not Solemnity. It's uh, what's the white one? The white one that you exile a white card to evoke it, and it basically just swords to plowshares.
I can't think.
That's okay. Endurance is the green one. We all know that
Right.
one. That's the absolute terror, and then it comes back and does the same thing again to another player. Like those kind of cards, I think are really cool for this particular deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Another one that I actually really like for my deck is
Mm-hmm.
actually a combination of either the Dothy Voidwalker or Dune Blast, especially the Dune Blast because it wipes the board for everybody else, but then gives me the full complement of whatever I had as enchantments.
Nice.
So it can really, and it's even more helpful if Merkel's down. Well, my life total's down to about 18, 19, 20 because Merkel's indestructible.
Yeah.
So it really becomes fun.
Yeah. I have a question actually. Do you tend to ride the line of like trying to get your life total under half, or do you just kind of ignore that?
No, I actually run a Bolus Citadel with that express purpose.
Okay. Awesome.
Uh,
Yeah.
because and if you're playing Bolas of Citadel, are you not really doing it wrong if you kill yourself to your own cards?
Been there, done that. That Necropotence and oh gosh, Black Market Connections does that really well too because you can nug yourself for 6 every turn if you really want to. Um, yeah, and it's also an enchantment. There you go.
And
So
talking about Necropotence, yeah, Necropotence and Black Market are both enchantments.
yeah.
That is where, I was saying earlier, you can throw in uh, other cards that help to search out basics. For example, maybe instead of the Kodama's Reach or Cultivate, you might put in Perilous Forays,
Mm-hmm.
which is an enchantment. You can sack a creature to search for a land with the basic land type and put it in the play tap.
Yeah.
So you can get shock lands that way too.
Yeah.
But it's also
Um,
a sack outlet, which is nice.
a great one actually that people don't think about as a tutor is actually Dig Up. Because it says that like it's got the cleave cost where
Mm-hmm.
it's search the library for a basic land card and put it into your hand. But if you pay the cleave cost, now it becomes a green tutor
Yeah.
that you can really use to kind of in addition to like your diabolic tutors and grim tutors and actually idyllic tutors in the deck too. I have a lot of tutors.
Mm-hmm.
It's surprising I don't win
Yeah.
more.
Kind of toolboxy, like. So yeah, that's what you're really looking for, right? Do you run a lot of enters the battlefield effects? That's another one that I would say would be a really solid add or search if you were going to do something like that.
No, a lot of actually a lot of mine are the when a creature controls or you control dies
Okay.
specifically because I want to sack like I have the sack outlets like Priest of Forgotten Gods,
Mm-hmm.
Skullport Merchant, Woe Strider, and that kind of thing, to where you can really, like I said, the idea is not to have a board full of creatures, but a board full of enchantments. Like unless you have a farewell or something like that, you're not doing anything about. Use a blood artist to kind of clean up.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, because there are just so many different directions that you can take it. It's really cool though. This particular deck because I don't think there's like a prescriptive necessarily way to build it. There's just a lot of really cool options. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So that's kind of how we would use the search engines to look for stuff, specifically in this case for Miracle, but look for words and keywords in your commander's text box, basically, right? That are going to be, hey, this is going to have a high synergy. There are a good density of cards that are going to help you get to your end game here and move forward that way. Search for that kind of stuff. Um, yeah. So as far as I think deck building resources, that's a good start for us. How about deck builders in particular? Because I have 3 listed here. That I've only ever used these 3, and that's Tapped Out, Architect, and most recently Moxfield. What
I've
do you?
used both. I've used both Architect and Moxfield. I'm actually transitioning over to Moxfield now,
Mm-hmm.
just because while Architect is great,
Mm-hmm.
I feel that Moxfield has a few extra advantages. But when you're starting out, either or, but maybe even Architect to start with, just because of some of the additions, like they have the EDH Rec tie-ins
Mm-hmm.
that can really help you as far as finding other synergies.
Yeah. Yeah. Jero, what do you use for your deck building?
Oh, it's interesting. I don't really use it for deck building. I just use it for sharing.
Mm.
Moxfield.
Yeah.
For me, when I'm deck building, I like to physically have the cards,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't necessarily have the cards perfectly organized. Basically, I get so I use the searching sites to get a bunch of synergistic cards, and then once I have the giant pile, I start putting them into smaller piles based on the jobs, which we've gone over in the past. And then I narrow down each pile to a certain amount in order to get the deck to function and have the ratio that I like.
Okay.
So An example of that would be I'm about to build the Saga deck.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I started off by getting all the green and white sagas I could find, and I already owned a couple. Like I had an Urza saga already. So though that pile of cards is going to come in most
Oh, I think we might have
already
lost.
do,
Oh.
so that I don't have to just throw them in there to throw them in there. Like
Mm-hmm.
History of Benalia is going to be a card that's just kind of thrown in there for synergy purposes,
Mm-hmm.
but isn't actually doing any job that the deck would want. It's just there to be a saga.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like to put them out like that. I don't like to build completely online unless when I was playing Arena, I would do that sometimes. But
Yeah.
I prefer to move around the physical cards.
And I agree with you there. It's nice to have the physical, like tangible, and sometimes just to work with what you've got, um, so you don't have to buy new cards. Um, yeah, if you're on a budget,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a good way to do it, especially if you have a decent collection already. Um, I would say that the one that I have used the most out of these three is probably. Uh, I've used Tapped Out the most, but I kind of steered away from putting deck lists online for a while just because I had a bunch of stuff and there was no real purpose to it. Uh, but most recently, I started using Moxfield because they've done a really good job at supporting content creators, especially ones that have to use physical cards in their presentations and stuff like that. So, Moxfield, great site from what I can tell so far. I've only been using it for probably 4 or 5 months. Um, but yeah, the everything's really smooth. They have a playtest function, which most of these, I think all three of the sites actually do have some sort of playtest function that you can run your deck through um, and see how it plays theoretically. I think there's a little bit of something to having the physical cards in that particular case too that makes you, hey, I have this card in my hand right now and I really don't want it. So you can swap that out in the deck building process when you're gold fishing and get there. Um,
One of the neat things about the playtest feature on Moxfield
mm-hmm,
is you can actually set it up in OBS as a virtual camera and play on Spell Table using Moxfield.
mm-hmm,
So if you're waiting for the cards to come in, you can literally playtest the rather than just play solitaire. You can actually play your friends.
yeah,
Yeah, I did that on Cockatrice when I was playing or when I was practicing for formats. Like I did that with CEDH as well as with I think it was Popper EDH, not Popper EDH. I actually made that with Bubblegum EDH, and then it's a couple people in my Skull Symbol server like Zynum um, who do that. And so not only is my server proxy friendly, you can proxy a whole deck.
yeah. And that's really nice that that's actually an option. Um, just because then you don't have to buy all these cards that you're spending way too much money on. We won't talk about that. And you come to find that you don't need some of them. I'm a huge perpetrator of this, by the way. Like, I will go through and without putting a actual deck list up, I will just order a bunch of cards that I'm like, this can probably work in this deck, and I'll have like 15, 20 cards left over at the end of it that I don't actually need, which just ever expands your collection of cards you don't actually need to use, right? So for purposes of conservation of space, as somebody who's like a little bit more minimalistic, I really encourage people to put their decks out on some of these sites just to be like, I have this concrete 100. I'm gonna buy these and I'm gonna call it good for right now. Um, yeah.
It's also good for keeping track of cards you own
Mm,
because they all, especially Moxfield, has it a lot easier where you can just add when you add the deck, it also adds to your inventory.
mm-hmm.
So you don't do what I've done, accident ordered something you've already had just because you couldn't find it.
Yeah.
And then
Uh,
it's like, oh wait, I do have that. It's in this spot. And then you feel silly because you just spent 50 cents on an uncommon that you already had.
yeah.
I do that fairly regularly, rather than go through my collection to find something.
On a similar note, actually, so for our viewers at home, I got the opportunity to watch the Prof's video on his online resources. It's really quick. Go watch it. It's a good, just like summary of what each of the different sites do. Um, and one of the ones that he suggested was Deckbox, which apparently is kind of like open source trading as well as collection keeping. So it will automatically match you up with other people that have the cards that you want and are looking for the cards that you have. So you're able to mark your collection with tradables, non-tradables, and that site does all that work for you. So check out Deckbox. That is all I know about it. Was what he had on his video. So, but it's something that I'm probably gonna check out after the stream here. So good one to check out for collection storage as well.
I just wrote that down. That sounds pretty neat.
Yeah. Um, Especially just because like they don't charge you to do it, and I've been selling on TCG Player for a long time, uh, and they take a significant chunk out of your sales. So it's cool to be able to actually trade people for things instead of going through the middleman, so to speak, of having to get the cash, then buy the cards that you want. You can just go straight through and trade online like that. Yeah. Any other notes about just like deck assembly sites at all?
So going back to like art, some of the other useful features of Moxfield and or even Architect is the going back as you oh gosh I was going to say so you can see your collection
Mm-hmm.
because I have a hard time when I'm building actually like getting the correct number of lands. So
Mm-hmm.
I have to go back and like I put my pile together,
Yep.
and then I'll enter it into Moxfield or Architect, and then I'll see I have like 40 some creatures and only 26 lands. Maybe I should do something about that. So it's good to visualize exactly you know the makeup. Do you have enough sorceries? Do you have enough instants? Do you have too many or not enough mana rocks?
Yeah. Um, yeah. And on a similar note to that, just like the ability to get input on your decks is really valuable, especially since there are so many players of Magic. Um, but if there are people that you respect in the community, like share your decks with them. I'm sure that almost everybody would be able and willing to help you uh, make those last few cuts. Like a lot of us do that. Put the decks out there and say, "Hey, I've got 105 cards. Need to trim down. What are some recommendations?" So I've even seen like the bigger content creators from EDH Rec and Shivam from Casual Magic do that a couple of times here and there. So that is a
Content
hmm?
Speaking of content creators from EDH Rec,
Yeah.
I actually do in my Skill Symbol Discord. We have deck discussions where people will talk about their decks and what they want to see fixed. And I'll sometimes put things in there. Usually, I won't ask for like specific cuts. I'd say something like, "I don't like how this deck does this job." Usually, it's related to winning the game,
Yeah. Apparently
and see what
Moxfield.
kind of
Oh,
suggestions come up.
yeah. Apparently Moxfield also does EDH Rec suggestions. Somebody in our chat just posted that, so that's pretty cool. Seeing that.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Um,
I'll have to look for that because I didn't see it.
yeah. Well, I think this is an actually really good time to transfer over to EDH Rec itself because it is a pretty big deal for our community. Um, there are just so many different ways you can search through this thing. So, Jiro, take it away. Like, what is the purpose and the goal of, if you can say this, like the overarching goal of EDH Rec? What's the intended purpose for it?
So, EDH Rec, in terms of what it does, is it compiles information from different deck sharing websites. Uh, And in terms of its goal, um, maybe Jason Alt would be a better person to describe it like that, but it's essentially it's to provide data and information to help people um, understand the format better and to help give people suggestions for how to build based on what has been done before in any of a few different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't provide necessarily the analysis, it provides the information, and then the articles help to analyze that information in order to help people build.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, I would say I really like EDH Rec. I think it's a solid website. I think that the use of the information is probably the most important part, and that's on the side of the user, not necessarily on the side of the programmers, the article writers, everything like that. Because if you take the information as prescriptive, uh, you're kind of like doing the opposite of what the site is intended to do. I think that's just kind of like blowing smoke maybe at a certain point, but just because people have been doing it does not mean that it's the right thing to do. Um, there are a great example of this is if you look at any of the precon commanders, a lot of the high synergy quote unquote cards or the ones that occur the most in those decks are going to be the ones from the precons, just because of the saturation of people submitting decks that are altered precons, from my understanding. Would you say that's accurate, Jero?
Yeah, I would say data is neither good nor bad, it is.
Yeah.
And EDH Rec just puts the data in one place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think that they have like the articles are really great for understanding what's going on, or not just in the community, but like with the different sets that are up.
Yeah.
So it really helps for education for me at least because I don't remember that well. So, to be able to read set reviews and see stuff like, everybody knows that Shieldred is great, but why is Shieldred great? What synergies does Shieldred have with it? That sets like, set reviews like that are really helpful.
Yeah. And I also would like to specifically point to the themes tab that they have on the site, because that's going to be
Mm-hmm.
super helpful in building, because that's going to help you identify like some of your central synergies for your commander, and then you can kind of build based off of similar commanders if, like, let's say it's something that's a completely new one that has very few decks submitted so far. They can't give you data on something that doesn't exist yet, but they can give you data on the past stuff. So the things that are broken down in similar themes, in similar color combinations, will be really helpful, I think. Um,
I also really like how if you select a commander, like let's say that you want to find a new way to build something,
mm-hmm.
you can go to the commander and you can so first off you can go as commander or as card and then find an average deck,
Mm-hmm.
but you can also go specifically by theme
Yeah.
and look at, okay, what's a way of building this commander that I might not have thought of.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can see the average deck based on what people have put out on that.
Yeah.
Even then, though, it doesn't tell you everything that commander can do.
An
Right.
example of. Sorry. Go ahead for a minute. I need to look at something real quick here.
I was going to say, not only that, but with it also breaks it down by synergies. It breaks it down by, just creature enchantment and things like that. So you can really drill down into what can help your commander work. And the great part about it is that it's so wide open that you can you know pick and choose. Like you don't just you're not beholden to 100 cards. They have like just a couple hundred that you're able to choose from that will work. Usually that will work within that commander. And it's I found it to be kind of helpful to make sure that I'm on the right track.
A
And
great
also, it's helpful to buy a couple.
an example of this when you're talking about doing things that are not like necessarily normal. So there are the by theme tab is usually right underneath the commander's picture, and I'm looking at it right now, which is why I know this. Uh, my favorite deck right now is my Kess Dissident Mage deck. Of the decks on the website, there are almost 1,800 Spellslinger decks, and there are 18 Reanimator decks. One of those is mine, because yeah, it's super cool, the Kess Dissident Mage Reanimator build, because you can just like toss anything into your graveyard and pull it back. So, and that deck is modular for me because I can take these 15 creatures, which are the ones that aren't necessary to like the essential core of the deck, and I can swap them out for 15 other creatures that are just big hits, and that deck becomes super fun. I love it so much. It's just really great to play. So yeah, look for things like that. Look for opportunities to do the off the wall, maybe a little bit wacky theme.
Speaking of things that are off the wall and wacky, one of my favorite columns on there is by an author named Philomene Gaiten. The series is Do Your Worst, and essentially color shifting strategies like mono red +1/+1 counters, Selesnya wheels. I do a lot of stuff like that when I build, and it's really cool to see somebody who builds a lot of the same way I do, except not necessarily with the ratios and such, but just the same kind of creativity.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Anything else to point out just off the top? If you are a combo player, they do have the areas to get those combos. It's under the cards tab and combos at the bottom, and you can just select a bunch of different ones. My suggestion, because I have seen this, I play combo decks here and there, but I have seen this be the case where you can select Esper combos and it won't include Azorius, Orsov, or Dimir, or even the monocolor versions in that combo. So you need to look at all of the different possible combinations if you enjoy playing combo decks and you're trying to get a few different ones to fit in. So that is my suggestion, just based off of personal experience and observation, is like check all of the different possible color combinations.
It's really good advice.
Yeah. Let's see here. Anything else super interesting? Yeah, I think that you can go through the sets, you can go through the themes. The themes is like one of the first things that I recommend people look at when they're trying to build a new commander, because there will be previous commanders that can kind of like point you in the right direction, so to speak, with the 99. So, yeah, any other thoughts about EDH Rec? Do you use it in any other different ways?
I've actually used the top 10 commanders. Like, there's a little tab or it's a little box off to the right hand side.
Mm-hmm.
Top 10 commanders. It's neat to, like, once again, if I'm looking through, just hey, I want to build a new deck. I start looking through my stuff. And, hey, you know what? I do have a mirror. Maybe I can build something with that. That's a good idea. And then you drill in, start getting some ideas.
Yeah.
So, and it's like I believe the top most popular commanders. So it's not always going to get you the most unique deck, but it's a really great way to go, oh, hey, you know what? That is a good idea. I should probably try that.
Yeah, if you go to commanders at the top and go to top commanders, you can change it based on the past week, past month, or past 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see, okay, if it's in the past week, what sorts of decks are people building? If it's in the past month, what are people likely to come to the LGS with?
Yeah.
It's not to say you won't get weird deck builders like me, but
for sure.
For a lot of people, they'll play with what they open in booster packs.
And one other kind of point I'd like to make about this is usually the last place that I end up going. uh, as far as like looking for cards in the 99, because you can look for synergies and stuff like that. Um, but you'll end up finding more if you like first resort yourself over to like Scryfall or other deck building resources first, and then come here and see if, oh, I missed that. Because you'll find a few cards that you're like, oh, that's a really good idea. I think I'll add that. But this won't bias your total deck building decision completely if you go here toward the end of the deck building process.
It's interesting because I usually go to EDH track at the beginning, but it's more just to go to the commanders part and just look at what exists.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have a few different Is It color decks, but I wanted to have them each have different commanders.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to look at a page of, okay, what are all the commanders that are in Is It?
Yeah, and I think
see,
that
okay,
if you're starting from like complete ground zero, like you don't have a legend selected, like that's totally fine, right? I'm just talking about if you're selecting cards for the 99, you find more interesting ads, and it becomes more. It's hard to say yours because let's face it, we're all using the same basic cards, right? Um, but yeah, I think it becomes more yours if you develop the deck and then see if there are pieces that you're missing rather than going it from the other direction.
I'll also sometimes look to see how many decks have been built of that commander or combination, because I don't necessarily like building decks that have been built a bunch of times. So let's say that I'm looking for an Is It deck and I want it to be different from other ones that I've seen. I might look at, say, Tibor and Lumia. That one's been around for a long time. It's from the original Guild Pact, but there's still only 211 decks built of it. So that's one that people aren't really expecting to see at the table, and one that people could find interesting or exciting.
So let's say you've done all this. You've gone through and searched on Scryfall. You look through EDH Rec for cards that you need. You post your deck on Moxfield. You've got the 100 ready. How about buying the deck? Where do you guys go for that? What's your normal approach for that?
So me, I actually have an LGS. It's about 45 minutes from me, but they have a site on TCG Player, so that's where I'll go first,
Mm-hmm.
just because they are my local. But from there, I've been known to go out to like other places like Cool Stuff or TCG Player or even what's the other one? Those are my two main ones though. Cool Stuff and even Card Kingdom. Like if I can't find it at the other three, I'll check Card Kingdom because it's not the least expensive, but it's still a good third resource.
Yeah, agreed. I started off pretty early getting turned on to Card Kingdom just because that was who the people that I started playing with, that was who they used all the time. Uh, and it was, yeah, it is the more expensive stuff. I will say two positive things about Card Kingdom. The shipping is fast and reliable, and you know that you're getting what you're ordering. Um, which sometimes is not the case if you go through TCG Player. This is as somebody who sells on there and has bought a lot on TCG Player. Um, like there are official graders at Card Kingdom that do look at the conditions of the cards, and they give you an honest look at it. The rest of us are kind of guessing a little bit. Like they have a guide as far as like how you're supposed to grade your cards, but it's still pretty subjective on the part of the seller on that. So that would be something I'd say. I do buy on TCG Player, especially if I'm strapped for cash, because it's the cheapest place to get cards one way or the other. But Card Kingdom, you always know what you're getting, and I do like that about them. Jero, any input on where to grab cards, or do you have any other opinions?
So I like Card Kingdom because you know what you're getting for the most part, and the speed is usually pretty decent. Star City Games is also pretty good in terms of making sure that you get what you ordered, and in a reasonable time frame. Um, there are some other issues with them, but hoping that they can get them resolved soon enough.
Hmm.
Um, such as Star City with laying off a number of their writers, and Card Kingdom with a unionization issue.
Mm-hmm.
But I do still like them both in terms of being accurate with the orders.
Yeah.
When it comes to places like TCG Player or the Channel Fireball Market, those are kind of hit and miss.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Quite a lot of it being missed.
Yeah.
But thankfully, none of them sponsor me, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, same. Yeah, this channel is not sponsored. We're just giving our opinions. This is just your subscriptions are what support us to keep doing this. So sub if you can. That's my plug for the day. Anyway, well, we've gone through a good amount of the process. Are there any additional deck building resources that either of you would like to bring in to our attention?
And actually, those are the biggest resources that I use. So other than, of course, there's always your friends.
Yeah.
You know, everybody has the one friend that knows pretty much what all the cards do. So you can always hit them up as well. But that's more kitchen table play than dialing things in.
Yeah. Jera, any additional resources you'd like to point us toward?
My favorite would be when I was doing my Wednesday streams, Work in Progress Wednesdays, because that was a time where you could be open and honest with each other and help each other out in terms of what you liked, what you didn't like, what you would change, but also just providing that feedback and knowing that nobody was going to take it personally.
Mm. Awesome. Yeah, and I think that that's a pretty big deal too. Being able to, so first of all, being willing to goldfish your deck, so play test it by yourself as many times as you can, just to see if there are cards that don't fit for you into maybe your curve, into your overall gameplay strategy, anything like that. Being willing to do that is going to make you a better a better player, as well as a better deck builder. Because you're going to come with something just a little bit more refined than the next person to the table. I do this probably 20, 30 times before I ever sit down at a table with somebody and play a game. With every single deck that I play, I at least goldfish it 20 to 30 times to make sure that it's got a good flow to it. Yeah, that, and then have friends that are willing to help you out. I mean, like, that's a big thing, right? I think that this is a good opportunity. Let's talk about some decks we've built recently that we used like a certain process for or something like that. I'm going to talk about a deck that I actually built yesterday, and I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to think about some of your more recent ones. So my friends and I like messing around with new formats and stuff like that, and we're calling this 2XC. So you play all legendary cards, period, have partner. And there are only two rules that are involved in this. One is you're not allowed to lock players out of the game, so you're not playing Teferi Chainveil in the command zone, right? Or anything similar to that. And then you are also trying to make the game at least 8 turns. So we are not trying to go super turbo fast format. We're trying to do things that are fun, that are interesting, that are going to be, long term. We're just looking to have a good time, right? So the deck that I built, and at least one of them is listening right now, and I wasn't going to tell them until tonight what I was bringing. But I built Launis Cryptozoologist and Tezzeret Master of the Bridge, and I have those two together. So,
nice.
Yeah, it's an interesting combination. I went really hard into the artifact creatures, specifically. Because Launis says when a non-token creature enters the battlefield, you make a clue token. which means that not only do you now have an artifact that's a creature, you also have a clue token, so you're doubling up the amount of artifacts you have on the board. And most of those are like utility artifact creatures. I'll play stuff like Tormod's Crypt Keeper. I need to find a Far Finder just so you can search your library for a basic land card and put it in your hand, because you'd be surprised how important that actually is on a regular basis when you're running 3 or more colors. And it also is going to continue moving your game plan forward. And then obviously Tezzeret Master the Bridge, his +2 is what we care about the most, which is each opponent loses life equal to the number of artifacts you control, and you gain that much life. So the whole point is use Lannis to put out a bunch of clue tokens, which Tezzeret Master the Bridge is going to take advantage of and close out the game. So when I was going through the process of that, the building the deck, it was just out of the cards that I have. I actually didn't use any online resources, but I'm still going to share the process a little bit. And the process was basically, I have my cards divided into very specific categories. I have card draw, ramps, single target removal, and board wipes, all in their own categories, sorted by color. And then I also have just bulk cards. Knowing that what I wanted to do was use artifact creatures as the major portion of this, I actually didn't go to my staples first. I went straight to artifacts and tried to find the creatures that were going to be helpful, that were going to be like kind of more utility. And I'm going to kind of skip forward in the process of doing the gold fishing. I found that the absolute best cards in the deck were the artifact creatures and artifacts that had cost reduction built into them. So like your Foundry Inspector, I believe, is one of them, Cloud Key, and then there's the blue 2-cost one that reduces your artifacts by 1. Those became the best cards in the deck because I could start dropping multiple artifacts on each turn and ramping up really quickly. So I went really hard into those specific categories, and I think that process was very helpful in all reality.
No doubt.
Yeah, the challenge of this particular deck building format is that you have to find stuff that works together but doesn't work together too well. And yeah, I really enjoyed that. That's the basic necessity. Everything is either an artifact creature or it is a permanent or spell that makes an artifact as a byproduct of having it in there. So that was my deck building process for that particular format. Yeah, do either of you have a deck that you want to talk about that you recently put together?
So I actually just finished up literally yesterday, a Jolene the Plunder Queen build.
Okay.
All around treasures. Literally things like Dockside Extortionist. I'm trying to think. What was another good one? But I use it basically to make treasures to pump up Jolene, and then from there just go face. So on the surface it looks like a mid-range deck, but and then you use it to build things up. Old Gnawbone, Captain Lannery Storm, things like that to build up that treasure count. Then you hit them with the gratuitous violence, literally and figuratively, because of the card. So when you have a 10/10 that basically has another attack turn or attack, kind of a beautiful thing, really. Yeah. And it did the thing for us last night, and I was super proud of it for something that I threw together in an afternoon.
That's awesome. Were there any other synergies that you looked for, as far as because a lot of it was like, does it make treasure, right?
Right.
Were there other synergies that you looked for?
Yeah, I started going because of the color combination. I leaned heavily into Gruul, so I started bringing other things in that would give me the bigger creatures. Things like the behemoth, things like Even I'm just trying to think off the top of my head because I just played it last night, but it's like I usually have to have my deck list up. But another good one is even just some of the other things like Gamble to pull things out, Fireflux Squad to give that extra attack, Wolfgar of Icewind Dale to double. I made the joke yesterday. Wolfgar of Icewind Dale is like Ishin at home
Mm-hmm.
because it does basically the same thing, and actually I think it does it a little bit better, where it doubles your combat triggers. So once again, you get that combat celebrant in there, and you extort the combat celebrant. Now you've got three attack triggers, or not three attack triggers, but three attack turns
Mm-hmm.
in a row. So it really, not only do you build up your commander for big hits and just win on commander damage, but you're also building up your other creatures, so you can just come in with big butts and just kick butt and take names.
Nice. I like it. That's yeah, big mana, big creatures. Kind of a similar deck that I built recently that kind of reminds me of that is Aranis and a Guild Artisan as the background. Um, you can easily have 6 to 7 mana available on turn 4 without a problem. It's pretty crazy. If you drop one drop Mana Dork or one of the enchantments, it's a $50 budget deck, so I don't do a lot of like super expensive like exploration, burgeoning, that kind of stuff in there. Um, but you can still run, Wild Growth Utopia Sprawl. That's not a problem. And it along a similar vein, like the end goal, because that deck is specifically focused on getting lands back from your graveyard. You run the cheapest possible fetch lands you can get, or the cycling ones, and then you run landfall triggers. So, Angry Omnath, you've got Phylath in there, Avenger Zendikar, and all of this still comes in kind of in the same way, right? You're going big mana, big creatures, swing for the fences, and I really love that strategy because that's very Gruul, I'm a Jund player, so Gruul is right in there for me. Yeah. J-Ro, tell us about a deck that you constructed lately. What was your deck building process?
So, probably the most recent commander deck that I built was Kineos and Tiro Mace's End.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that process, I looked to see how many gates were available in that four-color combination,
Mm-hmm.
and recognized that there were, at the time anyways, I believe 14 plus Maze's End. So that made it 15, and if I put 5 cards in that were capable of getting some of them back, I could have a 20-card win package with the hug variant being everybody searches out non-basics,
Mm-hmm.
like Tempt with so the green Tempt is in there.
Discovery, right?
Yep, I think so.
Yeah.
So yeah, the green as a Tempt with Discovery being in there, making it so that I can get a bunch of gates out relatively quickly. But also it helps everybody else, and so maybe, just maybe, they will forget about the fact that I'm looking for gates. Or maybe I won't have that many out and they won't recognize that it's the strategy because for Kineos and Tiro, it's not an obvious strategy.
Yeah.
But it works off of the fact that Kineos and Tiro lets you put a land back down. So I can do some interesting shenanigans with bouncing Maze's End and putting it back so I can have it active on my turn. Things to that effect, or just being able to plop down extra gates if I draw them. So Kineos and Tiro actually winds up being a really good commander for that deck, which is currently called Rainbow Road. So with that deck, my process was I wanted to have a deck that could win through an alternate way, because most of my decks win through either burn or maybe some combat damage, but a lot of them through burn
Mhm.
because burn is my favorite way to win. I
Here,
don't
here.
like having I don't like dealing 120 through combat. I like burning people out, especially once they've tenderized each other. Uh, so I like doing that or just big shots of damage. I like big splashy plays. So this was an attempt at making a deck that could win through an alternate win con.
Nice. Yeah,
So
I've seen a few of the Maze's End decks go off really well. Nine Fingers Keen does a crazy job of doing that. I was so surprised when I saw that deck work as well as it did.
mhm.
Um,
It's not tremendously fast. It's just kind of sneaky.
yeah, yeah. Because it's like, oh, you got to get 10 gates on the field? Yeah, right. When are you going to do that? Like, you don't got time for that. And the rest of us are all over here, like, pinging each other for one. Um,
I also have to find the maze's end, which is sometimes a difficult thing to do.
mm,
But sitting back behind a 2-8 and playing a political game is not difficult.
yeah. And you
So
have
that tech,
access. Hmm?
and I have access.
I was gonna say you have access to some of those Pelifort enchantments that you really need, right? Like your propaganda, ghostly prison, that kind of stuff. If you really need it.
I don't think I run those in there just because uh, when I'm building decks, I like the commanders to be relatively cheap and have higher toughness than power.
Mm-hmm.
But I want that weakness built into my deck where if somebody does hit it in the jaw, it can go down.
Mm, yeah.
I want to build in weaknesses because I don't want people at the table to feel like there's nothing they can do. And it's also it kind of makes a challenge to me. Can I finish the table off before they can use whatever resource I'm sharing?
Yeah.
So I have no problem with leaving my chin exposed.
And as we've gone through this series, I've started doing something similar because my 2xc deck does actually fold to a Vandal Blast, and I do not run counter spells. So, um, yeah, I get that. I get the wanting to, for lack of a better term, like it's embracing the variance of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is just, hey, my strategy can't cover everything, and that's okay. That has to
Mm-hmm.
be so.
I also trust in the ratios that I've built. Like, there are enough wrath effects in my decks where a deck that's trying to hit me in the chin really, really hard has limited windows in which to do that.
Mm,
But I don't build my deck specifically to say, I don't want you to hit me in the chin. I build the deck to say, can you hit me hard enough and fast enough?
mm. Awesome. Well, let's see here. We've got a little bit of time left. Um, yeah, let's just talk about. Gosh, running out of brain space here for a second. It's okay. Just let me short circuit and I'll get back on. Um, yeah, I think that when we're talking about deck building, a lot of what we're talking about actually has nothing to do with online resources, which is kind of interesting, right? Because we all just kind of went through our collections, it sounds like, for all of these decks. And I think that has to do with experience at a certain point, because you're not first relying on outside resources. Um,
I will say, I looked on Scryfall to figure out how many gates were now available in the colors because
mm,
I did not open any Baldur's Gate sealed product,
mm. Okay.
so I didn't know how many existed.
There are quite a few now. It's kind of crazy, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah, especially in four color or more. How many do you have? Is it like close to 15?
it's 14 plus the Maze's End, and
Yeah.
then I put in 5 ways to recover the Maze's End if it gets destroyed. Like it actually happened in the last game where somebody recognized that when I had mazes. So when they destroyed my Maze's End, I already had Life from the Loam in my graveyard, so I just got it back the next turn.
Yeah. Russ, what about you? Did you use any of the online resources we've been talking about for that deck, the treasure deck?
Absolutely. At for Jolene, I used the a big part of EDH rec, going in over with the different synergies, just because I needed those ideas. I actually picked up like 3 cards because of it. But yeah, I just happened to get lucky, and the majority of the cards that I had fit within those synergies. I then kind of went from there to I put what I had together, put it into Moxfield, and started cutting down from there. And found that I actually didn't quite work out. So then I kind of went back to the drawing board and went to Scryfall to see what else I could pull that would work within that. So it was kind of a combination thereof, really.
Nice.
And then I got it sleeved and put together. I tried it out and it worked. It was great because I'm like, I'm not 100% sure what this deck's going to do. And that I always think that that's fun when you put a deck together, you think you know what it's supposed to do, but you're always surprised when it does that extra thing.
Yeah. Very nice. Okay. Well, I think that is going to do it for today. I feel like we've had a pretty good run on as far as like all the different places that we can go and websites that we can use. I think like at a certain point, it's top recommendations. Scryfall, Moxfield, and then your choice. EDH rec, obviously. Um, that's not to say don't exclude yourself from the other ones if you enjoy them. If they fit your needs, they fit your needs, and that's the important part. So, where can we find you, Russ, if we want to? And tell us a little bit about the stream you're doing later this month too.
Oh, thank you. So you can find me over on Twitch, Uncle_Russ. I stream EDH on Fridays along with some Arena on Saturday and Sunday mornings. This coming, actually, this coming, not this coming, but the 24th, Saturday the 24th, I'm doing a 12-hour stream to both celebrate my birthday and to raise money for the Trevor Project. It's a charity that's really close to my heart, so I really do would appreciate just coming out and hanging out for a little bit. But yeah, in the meantime, you can find me playing games and slinging spells, and
Awesome.
I also do the daily affirmations over on Twitter at Uncle Russ Games.
And Jared, how about you?
I'm actually going to be streaming in a couple hours. Interestingly enough, because unfortunately, a member of the CRGR, which is a group that helped me get to the affiliate level on my own Twitch. So Jonathan PXPX was a member of the CRGR, passed away. He passed away very young and left behind a widow, and so we'll be streaming in his memory and also to raise some money on a GoFundMe for his widow and kid. uh, it gets me back to streaming, I guess.
Yeah.
Wish it wasn't that way though.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, yeah, I'm gonna be doing a stream for him and his family. Hopefully to help him out a little bit, and also to help pay back the CRGR for all the help that they gave me in getting going, because I've helped a bunch of other people get to affiliate status and beyond that, and so any help that I've provided has been because they helped me too.
And you also have your Discord channel and Twitter.
Yeah, so the skull symbol Discord server, and Twitter is at coach_J_RO. I have a YouTube at bit.ly/unsummonskull. And I did actually just make a new logo to go with the fact that I'm gonna, once I can get things settled, start making deck text on my YouTube to go with the edited Oathbreaker gameplay and the the edited Quote of Arms podcast episodes.
Yeah. And I'm Dead Robot. You can find me under CQ Crunch on Twitter and obviously on Twitch if you're on this page. I'm also under Commander Quantified on YouTube. Some more kind of like individual educational videos over there if you want to check those out. And I'm hoping to continue that at some point. It's just not really in the cards right now. Pun completely intended. So
I dig it.
yeah. Well, thank you both for coming on today. This has been fun talking about some ways that we build the decks that we really love. And to everybody out there, thanks for coming and watching, and we'll catch you later.